is a most uncomfortable phenomenon that occurs during spiritual awakening, and it is one that people rarely speak about openly because it seems to contradict everything we have been told about what it means to become more spiritual, more evolved, more conscious. The phenomenon is this: you begin to find that you cannot stand being around most people anymore. Friends you once enjoyed now exhaust you. Family gatherings that you used to tolerate now feel unbearable. Colleagues whose company was once pleasant now grate on your nerve. The majority of human interaction begins to feel hollow, draining, deeply unsatisfying. And this troubles you greatly, does it not? Because surely you think if you are becoming more spiritual, more awakened, more enlightened, you should be becoming more loving, more compassionate, more accepting of all people regardless of their level of consciousness. You should be like the Buddha or the Christ, embracing all beings with unconditional love and understanding. Instead, you find yourself withdrawing, avoiding, feeling irritated and exhausted by the very people you are supposed to be learning to love more deeply. So you wonder, have I become arrogant? Am I judging people? Am I falling into spiritual pride, thinking myself better than others? Or perhaps the awakening process has gone wrong somehow. Perhaps I am becoming less human rather than more human, less connected rather than more connected. Something must be amiss, because this dislike, this aversion, this inability to tolerate most people, surely this cannot be a sign of spiritual growth. But I want to suggest to you that what you are experiencing is not only normal, it is virtually inevitable during certain stages of awakening. And it is not a sign of failure or spiritual pride or loss of humanity. It is a natural consequence of a very specific shift that occurs in consciousness, a shift that temporarily creates a kind of incompatibility between you and those who have not undergone this shift. Let me explain what I mean. Before awakening, you are largely unconscious. You live in a kind of trance, a collective dream that humanity shares. And in this trance, you relate to other people through shared illusions, shared beliefs, shared assumptions about reality. You bond over complaints about life. You connect through gossip and drama. You find common ground in your mutual pursuit of success, status, pleasure, security. You commiserate about problems. You compete for achievements. You perform various social roles, and everyone else performs their roles, and there is a kind of dance that everyone knows the steps to. And in this state, socializing is relatively easy, because everyone is playing the same game, everyone is speaking the same language, everyone is operating from the same basic assumptions. You may have preferences for certain people over others, you may find some company more pleasant than others, but fundamentally you can get along with most people, because you are all inhabitants of the same dream. But then something begins to shift. You start to wake up, and as you wake up, you begin to see through the illusions that most people are still living in. You recognize that the things people are obsessing about are ultimately meaningless. You see that the dramas they are caught up in are self-created. You understand that the goals they are pursuing so frantically will never bring the satisfaction they imagine. You perceive the unconscious patterns, the mechanical behaviors, the reactive emotional loops that drive most human interaction. And once you see these things, you cannot unsee them. It is like watching a film and suddenly becoming aware that you are watching a film, that these are actors on a screen, that the story is not real. And once you have this awareness, you cannot simply go back to being absorbed in the plot as though nothing has changed. The spell has been broken. So now when you interact with people who are still deeply identified with their roles, still completely absorbed in the drama, still chasing the same empty goals and complaining about the same self-created problems, there is a fundamental disconnect. They are speaking a language you no longer speak. They are playing a game you no longer play. They are asking you to participate in a shared reality that you have seen through and can no longer pretend to believe in. And this creates a kind of exhaustion, a feeling of falseness, of strain. You are being asked to meet people in a place where you no longer reside. You are expected to care about things you have recognized as ultimately unimportant. You are supposed to participate in conversations that feel utterly empty, to pretend interest in dramas that you can see are entirely self-created, to support pursuits that you know will lead nowhere. Moreover, most people are operating at a very low level of presence, a very high level of mental noise. they are not actually here, not actually present in the moment. They are lost in thought, in worry, in planning, in regret, in fantasy. And when you interact with someone who is lost in thought, there is no real meeting, no genuine contact. You are speaking to their mental construct of themselves, to their idea of who they are, not to their actual being. And this too becomes exhausting, because you have tasted genuine presence, genuine contact, genuine meeting between beings who are actually here. And once you have tasted this, the alternative feels deeply unsatisfying. It is like having eaten real food and then being offered plastic replicas of food. You can see that they resemble food, but you cannot actually eat them, cannot actually be nourished by them. There is also the matter of energy. Before awakening, you likely gave your energy away constantly without even realizing it. You allowed yourself to be drawn into other people's dramas, to take on their emotional states, to be affected by their moods and opinions and judgments. You were permeable in ways that allowed people to drain you, to pull you into their patterns, to use you as a receptacle for their unconsciousness. But as you awaken, you become more sensitive to energy, more aware of these dynamics. You can feel when someone is trying to draw you into drama. You can sense when someone is attempting to offload their emotional state onto you. You can perceive when interaction is actually a form of energy vampirism, where one person is feeding off the attention and reaction of another. And once you become aware of these dynamics, you naturally begin to protect your energy, to maintain boundaries, to refuse to participate in these draining exchanges. But this means that many interactions that were once possible are no longer tolerable. The people who were unconsciously using you as a source of energy, as an audience for their drama, as a mirror for their ego, these people now feel uncomfortable, draining, even toxic to be around. Let me be very clear about something. This is not the same as judging people or thinking yourself superior to them. You may have tremendous compassion for people who are suffering in unconsciousness. You may wish them well, hope they find their way to greater awareness and freedom. But compassion does not require you to sacrifice your own well-being, to allow yourself to be drained, to participate in unconsciousness, simply because others are still caught in it. It is rather like someone who has recovered from a serious illness. They may feel great compassion for those who are still sick, but they do not deliberately make themselves sick again in order to keep the sick people company. They maintain their health, and from that place of health they may be able to help others, but they do not sacrifice their own well-being in the name of solidarity with suffering. Now, there is another aspect to this phenomenon that deserves attention. When you begin to awaken, you also begin to see your own unconsciousness, your own patterns, your own ego structures with greater clarity.